My name is Emma. I was 29 years old, and before that rainy evening, I believed that strangers were meant to remain strangers. I lived alone in Cedar Falls, Oregon. I worked as an interior designer. Most people thought I had a perfect life, but nobody knew how lonely I felt after losing my father 3 years earlier. That evening, heavy rain covered the roads. I just wanted to reach home and forget about another exhausting day. Soft jazz music played inside my car, and honestly, I was thinking about ordering pizza and going to bed early. Then I saw him, an old man standing alone near a bus stop. His coat was soaked by the rain. His hands were trembling slightly, but his eyes, there was something strangely gentle about them. I drove past him, but after a few seconds, my heart refused to let me continue. I stopped the car and rolled down the window. "Sir, are you all right?" The old man looked shocked, as if nobody had asked him that question in a very long time. "I'm fine, young lady," he replied softly. "I just missed the last bus." His smile looked kind, but lonely. I opened the passenger door. "Please get in." Tears suddenly appeared in his eyes. "People usually avoid old men like me," he whispered. Those words broke something inside me. A few minutes later, he sat quietly beside me. The rain continued outside, but somehow the silence inside the car felt peaceful. Then I noticed an old photograph sticking out from his coat pocket, a photograph of a young woman. She looked strangely familiar. "Was she your wife?" I asked gently. The old man looked at the photograph and smiled sadly. "No, she was the love of my life." But what he said next made me grip the steering wheel tightly. "And strangely enough, you have her eyes." I froze for a second. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel. How could a complete stranger say something like that? "What do you mean?" I asked softly. The old man looked down at the photograph in his hands. "Forgive me, Emma. Sometimes old memories make me speak too much." I wanted to ask more questions, but something inside me told me not to push him. Instead, I smiled and turned on the heater. "Where do you live, sir?" He became quiet. "Honestly, I don't really have a home anymore." I slowly turned toward him. I thought I had heard him wrong. "What happened?" I whispered. A painful smile appeared on his face. Life happened. His name was Walter Bennett. He was 76 years old. His wife had died 12 years earlier. His only son had moved overseas, and little by little, everybody had forgotten him. My heart hurt listening to him. Nobody deserved that kind of loneliness. I took him to a small diner near the river. It stayed open all night. The place smelled like coffee and fresh bread. Soft music played in the background. "Order anything you like," I said. The old man looked surprised. "You remind me of someone I loved very much." Again, those words made me uneasy. Who was this mysterious woman? For the next hour, we laughed together. Walter told funny stories about his younger days. I couldn't remember the last time I had laughed so much. Strangely, being with him felt peaceful. Then his smile suddenly disappeared. He looked at his watch. Tears slowly filled his eyes. "It's her birthday today. I visit her every year." "Your wife?" I asked. "No, the woman in the photograph." 20 minutes later, we stopped in front of an old cemetery. Rain still covered the night sky. Walter held the photograph against his chest. His hands were trembling. But the moment I looked at the name written on the grave, my entire body went cold, because the name carved on the stone was Eleanor Carter, my grandmother's name. My entire body froze. I couldn't breathe for a moment. Eleanor Carter was my grandmother. "That's impossible," I whispered. Walter looked at me with trembling eyes. "What did you just say?" he asked quietly. My heart was beating so fast. Eleanor Carter was my grandmother, my mother's mother. Tears immediately filled Walter's eyes. His hands began to shake. "Then life has finally brought me back to her." I stared at him in silence. "Who was she to you?" I asked softly. Walter looked at the photograph in his hand. "She was my first love." Rain continued falling around us. Walter smiled through his tears. "We were young. We wanted to spend our lives together, but her parents separated us, and I never saw her again." For 50 years, he had carried her photograph in his pocket. For 50 years, he had visited that cemetery every year on her birthday. Tears ran down my cheeks. I wrapped my arms around the old man, and he hugged me like family. "Thank you, Emma," he whispered. "You gave an old man one beautiful night." But somehow, our story didn't end there. I started visiting Walter every weekend. We shared coffee and stories. We laughed together. We celebrated birthdays together. Little by little, the loneliness disappeared from both our lives. Walter taught me how to enjoy simple moments, and I brought joy back into his home. 2 years later, Walter became seriously ill. I stayed beside him every day. "Emma," he said weakly one evening, "I was lonely for so many years, but because of you, I no longer fear leaving this world." I held his hand tightly. "You're not alone anymore," I whispered. Walter smiled peacefully, and in that smile, I saw the young man who had loved my grandmother all his life. A few days later, Walter passed away peacefully in his sleep, but he left me something far more valuable than money. He taught me that true love never really disappears, and sometimes one rainy night can change a life forever. The end.